Ever heard of a guy living a completely normal life, like a truck painter or something,
Yeah.
but secretly, he's one of the worst serial killers in American history?
Sounds like something out of a movie.
Well, it's not. That's the story of Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer. And that's what we're diving into today, the unsettling truth about his case.
It's a case that really makes you question everything you think you know about, human nature and how we perceive evil.
Absolutely. So let's get right into it, shall we? We're going deep into the Green River Killer case today.
All right, sounds good.
Now, this case, it terrorized Seattle and Tacoma for decades. I mean, can you even imagine the fear that must have gripped those communities?
Oh, absolutely. Imagine living there not knowing who this monster could be.
Right. And the fact that Ridgway was, well, seemingly ordinary just makes it even more disturbing.
Exactly. He wasn't some creepy loner hiding in the shadows. I mean, he was a truck painter, blended right into society.
Talk about a wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yeah, no kidding. But let's rewind a bit to the early 1980s when this nightmare began. Ridgway's victims, most of them vulnerable women, runaways, sex workers, they started vanishing.
And their bodies, it's chilling to even think about. They were found dumped in wooded areas near the Green River, hence the name.
Exactly. It was a horrifying discovery, one after another. And sadly, the fact that many of these women were, well, living on the fringes of society, it actually hindered the initial investigation.
You're right. It's like their lives, their stories, they didn't matter as much because of their circumstances.
A sad reality, unfortunately. But anyway, the investigation itself, it was massive, a huge undertaking. The Green River Task Force, a group of incredibly dedicated detectives, they faced immense pressure to find this killer.
Imagine the weight on their shoulders. They spent over 20 years, can you believe that? 2 decades chasing leads, running into dead ends, facing this seemingly unstoppable killer.
Unbelievable dedication, for sure. But let's talk about 2001, the year that changed everything. DNA technology, it was still pretty new at the time, but it finally gave investigators the evidence they needed to link Ridgway to the murders.
It was a game changer, a total revolution in forensic science. I mean, can you break down just how crucial that DNA breakthrough was?
Yeah, sure. Think of DNA profiling as a fingerprint, but at a microscopic level. Each of us has a unique DNA sequence. And in 2001, the technology had advanced enough that we could analyze even tiny samples and, this is important, compare them to old, even degraded samples from crime scenes.
So that's how they finally got him. It's amazing how far science has come.
Absolutely. It was a pivotal moment, not just for this case, but for law enforcement in general. So after years of uncertainty, they finally had their man. And then came the confession. Ridgway admitted to a staggering number of murders, 71. It's almost impossible to grasp the magnitude of it.
71 lives. It's beyond comprehension.
Yeah.
And, I think it's important that we talk about his modus operandi, as disturbing as it is.
You're right. It's crucial to understand his actions, to try to understand the mind of a killer, even if it's deeply unsettling. Ridgway often strangled his victims with his bare hands. And this is where it gets even more disturbing. He would return to the dump sites, engaging in necrophilia.
God, it's horrifying.
Yeah.
But why? Why the need to go back?
Well, it all points to a classic psychopathic profile.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, a psychopath isn't just someone who commits violence. It's a specific psychological profile characterized by a lack of empathy, a lack of remorse. And often they can be very charming on the surface, which, helped Ridgway blend in. But the necrophilia, the returning to the crime scenes, it speaks to a need for power and control, a desire to exert dominance even after death.
It's like he was dehumanizing his victims even further.
Exactly. And that dehumanization, it's sadly a common thread in serial killers' psychology. Now, let's not forget the plea deal. Ridgway agreed to confess and help locate the remains of his victims in exchange for avoiding the death penalty.
A deal that sparked outrage and debate.
Absolutely. Some people felt that justice demanded the ultimate punishment, while others argued that the families of the victims deserved closure, and that finding those missing women outweighed the need for retribution. It's a really complex issue, No easy answers.
And it makes you wonder, what is justice, really? But one thing's for sure, the Green River Killer's crimes left a deep scar on Seattle and Tacoma. That fear, that sense of unease, it lingered long after Ridgway was behind bars.
Definitely. The legacy of fear is undeniable. But it's also a story of how science can triumph, even in the face of something so dark. The Green River Killer case truly demonstrated the power of DNA technology and its potential to crack even the most complex cold cases.
So, if we're looking for takeaways, what can we learn from all of this?
Well, for me, it's a stark reminder that evil can hide in plain sight, but it also underscores the importance of scientific progress, the tenacity of law enforcement, and the courage of those who speak up for the most vulnerable among us.
All of that, absolutely. But what about the cases that remain unsolved? As technology continues to evolve, how can we use those advancements to bring closure to those families still waiting for answers?
That's the challenge, isn't it? We've come so far, but there's still so much work to do.
And that's something to think about.